All right, today we are diving into one of the most interesting figures in American history, John Quincy Adams. Now, here was a guy with a brilliant mind and a resume that was second to none. And yet his presidency, it's often looked back on as, well, one of the most difficult and maybe least successful ever.
And I'm not exaggerating about his qualifications. By any measure you can think of, John Quincy Adams was just exceptionally prepared to be president. You could even say he was almost uniquely groomed for the job his entire life.
So that brings us to the big question, right? The central paradox of his whole story. If he was so ready for the job, so smart, and so dedicated, what went wrong? Why was his one term in the White House just this constant uphill battle?
To really get a handle on this paradox, we've got to first appreciate just how much experience John Quincy Adams had before he even stepped into the White House. This is really key to understanding everything that came after.
I mean, look at this path. He was the son of a president, for starters. He was working as a diplomat when he was just a kid, practically. He served as a U.S. senator. He was the main negotiator for the treaty that ended the War of 1812. And he was an incredibly effective Secretary of State. His career before becoming president was already legendary. But here's the thing. Despite having this unbelievable resume, his presidency kicked off with a huge political firestorm, a controversy that would pretty much define his entire 4 years in office.
So, the election of 1824 was a complete mess. You had four major candidates who split the vote, so nobody got a majority in the Electoral College. That meant the whole thing got thrown to the House of Representatives to decide. And there, the Speaker of the House, a very influential guy named Henry Clay, threw his support behind Adams. Adams wins, and then, what's his first move? He appoints Henry Clay to be his Secretary of State.
Well, to the supporters of Andrew Jackson, who, by the way, had won the popular vote, this looked really bad. It looked like a shady, backroom deal. They immediately gave it a name, the corrupt bargain. And that accusation, it created this massive public distrust and just cast this dark shadow over his administration from day one.
But even with this awful start, Adams came into office with his huge, forward-thinking vision for the country. He truly wanted to use the power of the federal government to build a better, stronger nation for everyone.
He had this ambitious plan called the American System. He was talking about creating a national university, funding scientific research, building roads and canals all over the place. But his vision slammed right into the political reality. He was facing a totally hostile Congress, a public that didn't trust him because of that corrupt bargain, and just deep, intense political division.
And this just perfectly captures the disconnect. His opponents literally mocked him for proposing a national observatory. They joked that he just wanted to study the stars. But for Adams, it wasn't a joke at all. He genuinely believed that investing in science and education was absolutely crucial for America's future. He was just thinking on a totally different level.
So let's break it down. How did this fight between his big ideas and the ugly political reality actually play out? What did he get done, and where did he come up short? Let's give it a balanced look.
First, you have to give him credit. Even with all that opposition, his time in office did have some really significant positive impacts.
His ideas about education and science, they were decades ahead of his time. He really pushed for the federal government to take a lead role in building up the nation. And he had this incredible moral integrity. He refused to play the political game of rewarding his supporters with jobs. And hey, some of those infrastructure projects did get through, which helped the country grow.
But that same refusal to play politics, combined with the whole corrupt bargain thing, also had some major downsides for his presidency.
The political fight with Andrew Jackson's camp just got more and more intense, deepening the divides in the country. His actual legislative record was pretty weak because Congress blocked almost everything he tried to do. And in the end, all that anger over his election and his kind of elitist style, it directly fueled the populist movement that swept Andrew Jackson into the White House in a landslide 4 years later. But wait, the story doesn't end there. Not even close. For most presidents, leaving the White House is the end of the line for public service. For John Quincy Adams, it was actually the start of a whole new chapter. And this is where his legacy gets a really surprising twist. Instead of just retiring, Adams did something that nobody had ever done before. He ran for Congress, got elected to the House of Representatives, and served there for another 17 years. Think about that. An ex-president serving in the House. It's just extraordinary.
And it was in Congress that he found the real cause of his life.
He became one of the most passionate, powerful, and absolutely relentless voices fighting against the expansion of slavery. He used his incredible legal mind to champion civil liberties, and he became a hero to the abolitionist movement.
And this just forces you to completely rethink what a successful political career even means, right? His 4 years as president were a constant struggle, but his nearly 2 decades in Congress after that, they were absolutely transformative.
So the whole story of John Quincy Adams really leaves us with this one big question to chew on. Is a leader's legacy defined only by their time in the top job, or is it about a whole lifetime of service and fighting for what you believe in? It's a paradox that's definitely worth thinking about.